Hello everyone, we are doing our first ever sit down with one of our newest lines that are coming out. The campaign is all about mothers with children who have a disability. We have some amazing women that we're naming pieces after. They're all here and they're going to introduce themselves.
I'm Fatima Saleh. I have two daughters on the autism spectrum. I have Bayan, who's 8 years old, and Khadija, who is 4 years old.
I'm Amala Rahme. I have my son who's 8 years old and he has Angelman syndrome.
I'm Jemana Isa. My daughter Lily is 10 years old and she was diagnosed at 7 weeks with infantile spasms.
My name is Iman Sousa. I have a son named Marcelo. He's 2.5 years old and he has profound bilateral hearing loss.
When you guys first found out you guys were having a child with a disability, did you guys find out in pregnancy or post-pregnancy? And what were your initial reactions or emotions or feelings when you found out?
I found out with Bayan probably when I started hearing the word autism probably around 10 months. She wasn't hitting any of her milestones and she was crying a lot. There was a lot of screaming and tears the first couple of years of her life. So I went through the early interventions program because she wasn't making any words or word approximations or honestly anything that you could interpret as to what she wanted or needed or why she was crying. So the first time they said autism to me, that's when I started researching and started to try to figure out if that's what it was. The issue with that is that autism diagnosis is really geared towards boys. So there's not a lot of information out there when it comes to girls. It presents really differently in girls. So anything I would read or research, it didn't seem like her. You know, it talked about spinning and flapping and eye contact. Well, she didn't do any of those things. But we still couldn't figure out what was going on with her. So they sent her for multiple hearing tests and she wouldn't sit through those. So finally they decided to put her to sleep to do a hearing test because they thought maybe she was hard of hearing. And that's why, you know, she was acting the way she was acting. And I remember distinctly after they put her to sleep and they did this hearing test for her, she was about 2 years old. And the nurse comes in the room and she goes, you know what, she's completely fine, she has no hearing loss. And I remember breaking down crying. And the nurse said to me, like, why are you crying? This is a good thing, she's okay. And I was like, yeah, but if it's not hearing loss, then what is it? I don't know what's wrong with her. And alhamdulillah, nothing's wrong with her. We just didn't know what the issue was.
Yeah.
And so finally, when she was able to get through the IPAS clinic, which is the diagnostic clinic at the Glenrose here in Edmonton, there's a really long wait list for that. So by the time we finally got through there, it was very clear that she was autistic. And they labeled her severe. And the diagnosing doctor said, you know, she's probably not going to be able to be independent. She may never speak. She may never hit any milestones. Like she may have a very difficult life. And that was hard to hear. But she did say one thing to me that really stuck with me because I was feeling really overwhelmed at that point. Even though I kind of had an idea, okay, she's autistic. I had been researching. I had an idea of what that might look like. She said, if we've seen in her test that she can learn. So she said that and I held on to that like a lifeline. So we threw ourselves into huge amounts of research and trying to figure out what we could do for her and finding the supports for her that she needed. And her diagnosis was probably the best thing we ever did. Getting her diagnosed and getting that, so many people would say to us, don't label her. Labeling her and getting that diagnosis opened the door to funding and supports and having therapists come in and help her and all these things. So for us, it was a mixture of getting that diagnosis for her was a mixture of relief. Like we were relieved that we finally knew what was going on. We had a name to it. We could actually now address it. And a lot of uncertainty about what her future might look like.
So from what I hear, like Fatima, you had kind of brought it forward. And I'm in the same case. So Marcelo was born in July of 2019. And there is the hearing test that's done, the pre-screen at the hospital. Marcelo passed.
Oh, wow.
So he had no issues. We left with a healthy little baby boy ready to go home to meet, you know, his little big sister. And that was it. We were living life. You know, fast forward to March where COVID entered the world. It was, you know, I was on mat leave, just doing my thing as a mother. Marcelo started crawling at that time. So for me, I didn't think anything of it. I mean, he was reaching all milestones up to that point. But I realized he would never turn to sound. You know, he would be crawling down the hallway and say, Marcelo, Marcelo, nothing. You know, it triggered something. You know, being in the bathtub, I would have I'd turn on the faucet just to maybe add some more water. Nothing. What little child at that age would not turn to sound? So of course I brought it forward to my husband, and he thought I was being ridiculous. I brought it forward to some of my sisters. They thought I was being ridiculous. They're like, he's fine. So now it's April, and I call his pediatrician, and I had said, I think there's something wrong with his hearing. I couldn't get through to the pediatrician. I was always talking to the nurse or the assistant, and they said, unfortunately, because of COVID, we are not seeing any child above 6 months, unless it's an emergency, and in this case, it's not. Well, for me, it is an emergency. There's something not right. Weeks have passed, months have passed, still trying to get a hold of them and getting the runaround that they're not doing any testings, and there's a waiting list. So they gave me the number to see if there's any way I could, be bumped up on the list. And every time I call, they say, due to COVID, there's a 10-month wait. I'd call a few weeks later, they'd say now there's an 11-month wait.
Oh, wow.
Well, it's not working in my favor. And I adore a pediatrician, but that runaround, it felt like, it felt like I was not being heard, and I felt like I was just in a, I don't like what I was getting out there, so let's, I just.
They brush you off a little bit. They make
Yeah,
you feel a
I
crazy
felt
person.
like
It's gaslighting.
that's exactly what it was. It felt like I was nothing, and my son was a nobody to them. So finally, I was talking to Jo, and she brought up what was happening to my son and that he wasn't being cared for, that her pediatrician for her daughter Lily was able to take me on and my son.
Nice.
So now fast forward to August, where we were referred to Dr. McGonigal, and we got to see him in September. And as soon as he seen him, he said, well, there's a chance that I may not be hearing. It could be autism. So I was like, really? Like, what do you mean? And I know nothing about this. I know very little about, the deaf community or hard of hearing. And I know really nothing about autism. So as soon as we got to meet Dr. McGonigal in September, and now my son at this point is 14 months. I brought this up initially at 8 months. So we're now 6 months later. Dr. McGonigal looked at him, kind of, he did a quick assessment. I would say maybe like a 30-second assessment. He looked at me, he's like, it's not autism. I said, okay. And he's like, my son never looked. He's like, we're going to send him for an ABR exam, which they would put him under to do a full auto-stem brain response. The ABR. So he was put under for this test. And I'll still remember, again, because of COVID, I wasn't allowed to go inside. So I was in the waiting room, or I'm sorry, not waiting room. I was in my car in the parking lot. Bawling my eyes out.
Are you serious?
No, I am serious.
They didn't even let you in the waiting room?
No, because my husband was allowed. There was only one parent. And so my husband got to go in, but he wasn't even allowed to be in the room when they did the testing. So anyways, at that point, the doctor put me on FaceTime. I'm sorry, on speaker at that point to say, the results came in and it doesn't look good. And they gave me the diagnosis over the phone.
You're in the car.
As I was in the car.
Alone. Oh my God.
Alone at the stollery.
Aww.
That he has bilateral profound hearing loss. What does that even mean? I have no idea. And I said, I can't do this in the car by myself. It's not fair to me. And so they said, okay, come in. So they let me in. And as I got to the front, one of the nurses met me and took me in. And that's where I got put in a room with my husband and my son, who's in a hospital bed, drinking his bottle, oblivious to everything going on, to say that your son is deaf. He doesn't hear. He lives in silence. And that was the first day of my new life. And that was it. Here we are.
Okay, I'm trying not to cry. God, I'm so sensitive.
No, but I know exactly how she feels. Like, you notice something right away, and they try to either make it smaller, they make you think it's nothing, and like, you're a kid, and that's what happened with Kareem. Like, you made me cry.
I'm sorry.
Like, he was 3 weeks old.
3 weeks old?
Go to me. Come on. He was 3 weeks old. My sister was holding him. Like he was kid number 7 in a matter of like 3 years from between all our kids. But then I started really noticing. I'm like, yeah, he's not following your finger. And like the littlest things that they do at 3 weeks old, we knew there was something going on. He screamed constantly too, always was throwing up, never could keep anything down. Like I remember, we got to the hospital 3 days later, I messaged my sisters at like 5 a.m. I'm like, he doesn't sleep, he doesn't do anything, he just screams.
Honestly, I'm the wrong host. If I'll take over.
It took a very long time for anybody to notice. Like we took him to the doctor constantly. He's not hitting any milestones. He wasn't doing anything. Finally, at 2 months, he was like losing weight, just not eating anything. So we took him to the hospital. He was admitted failure to thrive. They did all these tests, and they even brought a geneticist in, and she's
we were
like,
there, weren't we?
"Yeah, that's when we met."
I met you in the hallway. I was like, "What are you doing here?"
Yeah, like I knew her
Lily
through my
was in the
sister-in-law, but that's when I met Jemana. Like they were hospitalized at the same time.
That's
On the same
wild.
floor.
That is wild.
Okay, I didn't know that.
You said he was failure to thrive?
Yeah, so
What is
that's basically they label it when they're not growing, when they're first born. So after
Oh, okay.
a month, they should have hit, like after a week or two, they hit their birth weight again because they lose weight.
Okay.
So it was, at that point, he was born 7 pounds and he was down to 6 pounds at 2 months old. He was losing weight. So anyways, we spent a month in the hospital. They even brought a geneticist in because I was like, do everything. She looked at him and asked me questions and said, he's not a candidate for genetic testing. He seems like there's nothing going on genetically. So went home. He was on the feeding tube for 6 months. And that's when we finally, we thought he has severe GERD. He's allergic to milk. We gave him special milk. Started doing okay, but still no milestones. After that, he would constantly get sick. And every time he'd get sick, at 9 months, we were in the mall. We ended up in the hospital, just constantly. He'd get anything and we'd be in the hospital. At 9 months, I got an early intervention into my house too. And I was like, there's something going on. No, he always gets really sick. That's why he's not hitting milestones. They took us to a neurologist. She said the same thing. Just make sure he's not around a lot of people where he's getting sick. He'll start hitting them. Just before his first birthday, it was 3 weeks before his first birthday, he had a really bad fever. I took him to emergency. They said he's okay, take him home. Right when we walked into the house, he had a seizure. A really bad one, and then we called the ambulance and it was atypical. It was a normal febrile seizure. So we went back to the hospital and they did a EEG and everything, and we were just lucky that there was a doctor who must have just read about Angelman syndrome and kind of connected the dots. He came in and said, we're gonna test your son for something, it's called Angelman syndrome. While I was in the hospital, my sister picked up the phone. She's like, I'm gonna Google it while he's in the room. You read everything about Angelman syndrome. Abdulkarim fit every single box. We knew, we looked at each other, we're like, yep, that's what he has. But of course, for that 2 weeks, you're hopeful. Maybe it's not it. Maybe it's something else. Even that neurologist is like, I don't think that's it. And she gave me that hope because she's a doctor. But then, same thing, on his birthday, I was going to, we were going to go have a little cake after school. Dropped off my girls at school. My phone rings while I'm in the car. It's my husband. He goes, somebody tried to get a hold of you, but they're on the other line, so I told them we'll three-way you. It was the geneticist's office. And she broke it on the phone too. Didn't ask me what I was doing, nothing. She just said, so your results are in and he's positive. He has Angelman syndrome. And I was like, okay, cool. That's what we knew. And I just put it off and I told my sisters, we're coming. I was like, no, you guys, I'm fine. I'm okay. We knew this was happening. But then I broke down in Costco. That's the story. I just broke down in Costco for no reason.
Yeah, I've broken down in Costco too.
Because they were like, we're coming to your house. I'm like, no, everything's going on as normal. We're having the birthday. Everything is okay. I'm going to Costco. They didn't have the cashews I wanted, and I just broke down in Costco. And I went home, and I was like, no, I need to be at home. But it took that whole year of me begging different doctors for them to figure out what was going on.
Well, that's the same thing with Lily. Pregnancy was normal. She's my first out of the 3 kids that I have. And everything was good. I went 40 weeks and 4 days over my due date. And yeah, riding in from Drayton Valley, I'll never forget, an hour and a half with contractions, full force. And we got here, had her, everything went really fast, really good. And because we were in Drayton Valley, we were staying at my in-laws. and everyone came and saw her. You know, she sleep and eat. That's all they did when they were babies. But she had a startle reflex like most babies do. And I remember I was in my mother-in-law's room actually because I was changing her, and she had the startle reflex, but she had like a cluster of them. And it's like, what are you scared of, Mama? It's okay, like, you know. But everyone's like, it's normal. That's what they do. They startle. So I'm like, okay. So I brought it to the nurse that comes like the day or two after you have a baby. And she's like, yeah, it's just normal. Everything's fine. She did her thing. Everything was great. Went home to Drayton Valley. Same thing. You notice these things here and there. And sometimes she would cry a little bit after it. And we're like, why are you scaring yourself? Like, what's going on? You know, like, it's okay. We're here. Looking back, those were them. That early, like within the first week.
Oh, wow.
But, you know, so then they started to become stronger and stronger and like clusters. So, everyone's telling me it's gas. It's her milk. Changed her milk. Laid her on her stomach for a little bit. Oval, Insoon, like everything. Like I was like, anyone giving me tips, I would take it because I was like, she's crying. Like, you know what I mean? So, yeah, that kept on happening, and then I took a video, and we left the hospital with this doctor out of the Lynx clinic. So I took a video for him to show him because I thought, this guy has to see. Maybe he can give me some answers to what's going on, right? So I showed him the video, and he's like, "It's fine. It's just startle reflex." And I'm like, "But like, do you see this? Like she did like 7 times in a row, and she's crying. It's fine." I'm like, "Okay, it's fine. It's fine." Like I felt a little bit of relief. So anyways, long drive back to Drayton Valley. I'm just like, "Okay." He said it's fine. It's fine. Yeah, so my mom was going to Lebanon. She was 7 weeks old. She came to my house in Drayton Valley. She's like, don't come to Edmonton. You know, she's new. Just keep her home and safe and whatever. I'll come see you and say bye for like 2 months that she was leaving. She's looking at her and then she's playing with her and admiring her like, you know, all grandmas do, whatever. So she's like, listen, she's beautiful. She's healthy. Something isn't right though. I'm telling you this.
Wow.
It hurts me to say this. Something is not right. Please, if you have the same feeling as I do, which I think you do, take her to the hospital. Take her to the stollery.
Your mom said that.
My mom said that.
Oh.
And like,
I'm getting a little goosebumps through this whole thing.
me and my husband were like, you know, like, but we went to the doctors. He said everything was fine. So like, that's it. I'm a new mom. I don't know these things, and everyone else telling me it's fine. It's fine. But like, it only took someone to see, raise 4 kids, see, you know, how many other kids to, and then like, you know, that mother push, like, something isn't right.
Yeah.
So I told my husband, like, what do you think we should do? And he's like, okay, pack a bag, let's go. She left back home, and we left to the stollery. 11 days later, we're still in the hospital.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. She canceled her trip because she wasn't going anywhere, my mom. And through those 11 days, so much testing, EEGs and ECGs, and she's having these clusters of these spasms. So they must, like, they've seen everything at the stollery, right? So let's just try to figure what's going on, right? So we were admitted, but it took 11 days for them to do all this testing, see the neurologist, see the dietitian, see the, you know, like pediatrician that was on call or whatever. And I had to answer so many questions and so many over and over again. Every day somebody different. Like I appreciate all like the doctors and then, like, of course the students because it's a learning hospital. And it's like by day 5 I was like, listen, like I'm tired of saying the same thing over and over again. She has an IV in her and she's like itty bitty. She's 7 weeks old. You know, we go for walks in the hallway. I actually met another mom there, and we're still in touch. But like it was long. And it was hard to watch her in the hospital get poked and prodded. Oh, we have to do more blood work, and we have to do this. And then they had to do like a spinal tap on her where I wasn't in the room. And the nurse literally folds your baby in half and takes fluid out of the spine. Oh, I was outside the room like bawling because I can hear her screaming. Yeah. Anyways, at the end of it, we kind of left with there's some sort of seizure disorder because the EEG showed birth suppression.
Okay.
So even when she's not presenting these spasms, which are seizures, her brain is always it's going like this.
Oh, wow.
So we left with a diagnosis that she has a seizure disorder. Later found out infantile spasm, what they label it, and then they don't grow out of it; they grow into something different. So she's kind of now under like West syndrome, which is basically the same thing: birth suppression, wave pattern in her brain. Obviously, we tried so many different medications, and nothing worked. Nothing. There's medication that we've been on since day one that is making them less, but she has a seizure every day, spasms every day, throughout the day. Before she would, like when she was a baby, I wouldn't sleep. I would watch her. I would count. She'd wake up. She'd have a cluster of 25. I still have the book. Write it down. What time it was. Then to sleep. I had a lineup of vitamins. Like they told me to give her creatine, that what people used to like.
Tried CBD.
Yeah, CBD, like anything they gave me, I like had them lined up. Like there was no Jemana. There was just like nurse, and I would watch her, and yeah.
So that's a lot of pressure on a new young mom.
Yeah,
it's like that, that's a lot.
Because you have to remember too, you're going through your own hormonal change.
Oh yeah,
postpartum and all that. So
there was no time for postpartum. There was just like, and I'd look out the window, remember, when she'd wake up and I'd feed her, and we have her like, our moments, and then I'd like just be like, alhamdulillah, she's not having any spasms. She's resting. And then like she'd just wake up and start having her cluster and start crying. It's like, I look at the window, I'm just like, is anybody else like feeling any of this? Like you're tired, you're drained. And you're just like I felt so alone. Like I'm in a smaller town. It's a lovely town. I spent 10 years there. They're great there, but like I was new there, newly married, a new mom, and I didn't know what the future held for her. And like we knew that her development would be whatever. Like if we could control the seizures, she would develop, obviously. But when your brain's too busy firing off these spasms, you can't learn to walk, to talk, to use your hands, So because we could never get seizure control, and some kids do. Some kids, the medicine works for them, and other kids it doesn't. There's kids with infantile spasms that are born with it that are married with kids and living life, and there's other kids that are wheelchair bound, nonverbal.
You guys,
Absolutely.
thank you so much for sharing that. But one thing I did notice from reading all of your guys' stories a little bit is all of you guys had to advocate for yourself when it came to trying to find out your child's diagnosis. It was not easy for any of you guys, from what I understand and from what you guys are saying right now and from what I read. And I think it shows a lot about mother's intuition and how you have to advocate for yourself, even though we have such a great healthcare system, but you still have to advocate. Like, we're pretty lucky, but one thing I know about moms is they're like superheroes and massive advocates for their children. So kudos to you guys.
Thank you.
Because it's not easy.